Penn State just landed an elite pass rusher in this class of 2026, but he's listed as a linebacker.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football recruiting, and as always, thank you so much for checking out another edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. This is your daily source for Penn State sports. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us a part of your regular routine. If you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. 2026 class continues to grow, but they need defensive linemen. We're going to talk about that to wrap up this show. Outlook at linebacker with 3 commitments. I got to say Penn State is probably finished at linebacker. Why that's a good thing, why that's also somewhat disappointing. We will begin with the third linebacker commit, Elijah Littlejohn. Get to know Elijah Littlejohn. The thing that immediately stands out is his ability to get after the quarterback. This guy has elite pass rushing skills. But why is he listed as a linebacker? Well, the way he's utilized in high school right now is as a stand-up pass rusher. He's all over the football field. This guy has high football IQ, great speed, acceleration, quick first step. He can blitz up the middle, attack the A and the B gaps, or attack from the outside. Primarily when you watch his high school tape, you are seeing that he is a stand-up edge defender. So he has that because they're playing this hybrid of a 3-4 defense of some sorts. Basically, it looks very similar to that with where he is at in high school right now. He's from Charlotte, North Carolina. And the way that he is utilized is as a stand-up outside linebacker, primarily rushing, setting the edge. He's got great speed. Like I said, it's that first step, and he's just able to run by offensive tackles. And then when it's obvious, it looks more like obvious passing down situations. This looks like on first and second down, he's close to the line of scrimmage on the edge, either the left or right tackle. He's either on either side of the box. And then he will move back and be that off-ball linebacker and blitz. These were all of his highlights, were him getting after the quarterback, causing pressure. He had some pass breakups here and there. He made some good plays in run defense. But it was really his ability to blitz after the quarterback. So he has natural pass rushing skills, vision to be able to read the plays, to know which gap to attack on a stand-up blitz. I mean, that in his junior season, to be able to do that during his junior season, that shows a lot. So I like this prospect quite a bit. He is going to project as a weak side linebacker, off ball, however you want to characterize it. Penn State is going to run primarily a 4-2-5, but think of that traditionally. Abdul Carter, before he moved to defensive end, what Tony Rojas is going to primarily play this upcoming season. So there's your Mike linebacker and your weak side linebacker. He is a weak side linebacker in this case. Stands at 6'1", 210 pounds. It varies. You look at On3, he's listed at 6'1", 210. You look at something like 24/7, he's listed at 6'2", 205 pounds. So solid size. I imagine that he would redshirt in this case unless he's able to add the weight over the course of his senior season. Maybe he does decide to enroll early. It certainly obviously wouldn't hurt here. But for someone that is over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, and the burst that he has, the acceleration that he has, it's the physical tools that he is going to be bringing with him to Penn State that really makes him an intriguing prospect in this class of 2026. But if I had to briefly summarize who Elijah Littlejohn is, I think he's a pure football player. He's a great athlete, carries his build very well. I do want to say this, that he is in this tweener spot where he's playing stand-up edge defender, edge rusher, if you will. But you can't put him at defensive end. Not saying that you can't, but there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve there. Okay, Abdul Carter did that, but Abdul Carter was also a top 3 NFL draft pick, so I wouldn't immediately compare him. I do think that Littlejohn has his own player profile, if you will, that I don't know that I can immediately compare him to somebody because he does a little bit of everything. He's primarily a really good pass rusher, obviously, but he's doing it in a variety of ways. It's not hand in the dirt as a defensive end. It's one play. He's by the left tackle, the right tackle. So the versatility is there. So he's kind of doing this different, he's doing a little bit of everything as this defender that just disrupts the line of scrimmage. So that's what Penn State is getting here, is somebody that is just able to disrupt the point of the attack, whether that's chasing down a jet sweep, going directly after the quarterback, if that's on the line of scrimmage. So in theory, you could teach him to play defensive end. I mean, they really don't want to dismiss it. Abdul Carter had to go through a little bit of a learning curve himself, but the difference really is getting into that 3-point stance, which he does not do. It is all from a stand-up position, whether that's on the line of scrimmage or off the ball as that second level linebacker. Penn State beats out NC State primarily because he is from North Carolina. I'm going off of visits, but he did have official visits set up to Virginia Tech, NC State, as I've mentioned, and Georgia Tech as well. So primarily ACC attention since he was from the state of North Carolina, but he did have some SEC offers. South Carolina was on his offer list, for example. I think this is another case of Penn State is finding a diamond in the rough. I think he plays a lot better than his rating says, but his rating is also going off of, okay, the skill set. I want to see more if he's going to develop as a linebacker, because Dan Connor was taking his necessary victory lap in the scheme of things. If you're going to take him as a linebacker and develop him primarily as a weak side off-ball linebacker, Littlejohn does not show, at least at this point in time, maybe his senior season changes things. How's he as a pass defender? How is he in pass coverage? I want to see him a little more in run defense at the second level, because all of his highlights in both rushing after the quarterback and stopping the run were as an edge defender, as that stand-up edge defender, basically a stand-up defensive end. And then when he was an off-ball linebacker, he was primarily blitzing between the guard and the center, attacking right up the middle. And again, that speed. It's the speed, it's the acceleration, the athleticism. Penn State wants to take players, because as the saying goes, you can't teach speed. You can't teach size, but you can teach them technique. So Littlejohn has college-ready athleticism. I do want to see how he does in terms of, again, being able to read quarterbacks in pass coverage. Can he cover a tight end? Can he cover a slot receiver? That's what I'm looking for if I have any question marks about Littlejohn as a football player. Again, he can eventually do this, but it is going to take practice, repetition, because he's presently not doing that. But that ability to get after the quarterback, that's going to be huge. And we're going to talk about how that complements what Dan Connor has done with linebacker in this class of 2026. Every linebacker has a specialty skill set, and Littlejohn contributes to that. What does that mean for linebacker overall? And I think they're done with commitments here in the 2026 class. I'll explain all of that and more coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app, because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. And we're talking all kinds of events: sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, you name it. You can get tickets to anything through Gametime, including big events like NBA playoffs. NBA finals are going on, and prices on the Gametime app will actually drop as it gets closer to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, no surprise fees, Gametime is a total game changer. You can actually use the Gametime app to get Penn State football tickets early, and if you've never been to Beaver Stadium, that panoramic seat view really does come in handy. I've used Gametime myself, and seeing that point of view, if you haven't been to a venue, a stadium, or an arena before, that POV, I think, truly is a game changer. It's helped me before going to arenas that I've never been to. It will certainly help you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think Dan Connor did a phenomenal job in his first full cycle as the true linebackers coach. And I know there was a hybrid role with him being an analyst, but helping out Tom Allen a lot with the line. He was more or less a pseudo linebackers coach. He was a liaison of Tom Allen last year. So development of linebackers, he's already kind of ahead there in terms of coaching and working with the linebacker room. But what's impressed me about Dan Connor is this is his first full recruiting cycle where he is the face of the linebacker room. And Connor has not disappointed. Each of the primary linebacker prospects that Connor has evaluated and has recognized, Penn State has gotten commitments from them. Terry Wiggins, state of Pennsylvania, 4-star. Matthew Lamah, state of Virginia, 3-star, 4-star. And now Littlejohn. All of these prospects are high upside. They do need some technique refinement, but you see the raw potential from all of them, and they all complement each other. I think Terry Wiggins is your guy that is a do everything. He could end up playing Mike linebacker, weak side linebacker. I think he's going to project more as a weak side linebacker, but exceptional speed, great in open space, and he can defend against the pass. If I had to say there's anybody in this linebacker room that's best in pass coverage, it's going to be Wiggins. And then Matthew Lamah is truly your thumping middle linebacker. This guy is your best pure run defender, great attacking downhill. I do want to see a little more how he refines his athleticism, because I would say of the three, he's probably the most lacking here. And that's not to dismiss him or criticize. It is to say that, hey, Littlejohn and Wiggins are a little faster, they're a little quicker, and that's okay. But Lamah is probably the strongest of the bunch so far. Yeah, they'd probably argue and say, right, they'd argue in a friendly manner of, I'm the strongest, right, and that kind of thing. But objectively speaking, Lamah's going to be your heavy hitter. He's going to be the guy that sets the tone in the middle. He's listed at 235 pounds, 6'3", Mike linebacker written all over him. So there you go. You have guys that, hey, clear as day, Mike linebacker, clear as day, weak side linebacker. And then Littlejohn now adds to this group where you have somebody that just, wherever he is on the football field, as long as he's in the box, he is great at getting at the line of scrimmage, setting the edge. That takes strength. I should have mentioned strength a little more. But what really did, I want to be honest and transparent, what really did jump off the tape was the fact that one step and go, he's past that offensive tackle. He's already after the quarterback. That first step is so difficult to teach sometimes to edge defenders, to linebackers as it is. Great read step, great vision, understands the point of the attack. Littlejohn really excels in that area compared to Wiggins, compared to Lamah. All three of these players complement each other. They all have a specialty skill set that they are bringing. And with Penn State running a 4-2-5, 3 linebackers is plenty in the class of 2026, and that's probably how it's going to go for the foreseeable future. You still want depth. You still need depth. You see how Penn State prioritized the transfer portal when Tamir Robinson surprisingly went in and Penn State said, hey, James Franklin said, we really need somebody to replace him. Depth still matters. So yeah, you have 2 starting linebackers, but they want to rotate guys in. These guys will play. They'll complement one another. Where I am slightly disappointed is that I think Penn State was really trying to get somebody like a Cincere Johnson who could play. He probably would have projected, I think, as a Mike, but he's so athletically gifted that he could play as a weak side linebacker, but he is a true Mike linebacker in the sense of he's 6'3", he's 240 pounds. Somebody, if he enrolls early, could probably play right away. While I did have cautious optimism that, hey, maybe Penn State could pull off a surprise recruitment here, it's disappointing because, one, they're not going to get somebody like Cincere Johnson, who really would have set this linebacker room apart. But 2, he's probably going to go to Ohio State. I think all the signs point that he's going to say he's from Ohio. Notoriously, the high school is a pipeline to the Buckeyes. So I think that I think that he's going to end up at Ohio State. So in the process, you miss out on a premier prospect, but you also have to face him as an enemy, as an opponent at the school that's been a thorn in your side for the better part of a decade, right? But that was somebody that I really circled that, hey, this would be one of the best commitments you could get if you're Penn State, because you get to stick it to Ohio State and you get a really quality player. Don't want to say that Wiggins, Littlejohn, or Lamah, they can't be that for Penn State in due time. But this means that Penn State has done. Somebody else that was visiting from the state of Georgia, Rodney, Colton, a lot of upside there as well. Similar build to Littlejohn, 6'1", 205 pounds. I think a little more college ready at this point in terms of refined linebacker skill sets. But Penn State takes this commitment knowing that, okay, Littlejohn has a lot of upside, but other prospects, other targets that they had their radar on are most likely going to go other places as well. So Penn State, they don't take commitments on accident. I've said that time and time again. They take players that they want. They wanted Littlejohn, but now they're finished. And I think you have to understand that too, that other priorities, other prospects that they would have liked to have taken are probably not going to be a realistic option at this point in time now with what Penn State has in a crowded, because they run a 4.25, it is crowded. It's very crowded at this point. But I like what Dan Connor's done. There's always room for improvement. I could speak to that about any position group when it comes to Penn State recruiting. But linebacker is in a great spot for somebody that is doing this for their first true full go around. Hats off to Dan Connor, because every linebacker prospect that he really wanted, these were all top priority candidates. He was able to secure. He didn't lose a recruiting battle that he wasn't in the lead for. This was where Penn State was in the lead for these prospects, and they were able to secure these commitments. The ones that were where they were a little behind or they would have had to pull off an upset, okay, in due time, I think Connor can do that. But at this point in time, all of the ones that they were supposed to win, they did win. And that's a positive outcome for somebody in their first full year. Now let's talk about the class of 2026 as a whole, focusing on defensive line, because quarterback's in a great spot, running back's got a commitment, wide receiver, and tight end, but offensive line, defensive end, defensive tackle, that is a massive priority moving forward. What is the outlook there? We're going to talk about it because they only have 2 defensive tackle commits. That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. All right, we get to D-line. Deion Barnes has his work cut out for him. Class of 2026 overall is in great standing. And why? So the conversation is going to change around defensive line, because Daniel Jennings, who was a part of this class of 2026, did reclassify. He moves up to 2025, and he will join Penn State for this upcoming season, most likely go through a red shirt, similar to what Max Granville did, who is now injured, in case you did miss that. But Jennings is not injured, and he's going to go through that redshirt development season, similarly to what Granville did the last cycle. So he's good enough to forego his senior season and join Penn State right now. And who knows, might see some playing time if he develops properly. So Penn State does not have an edge defender, does not have a true defensive end at this point. Alex Haskell, Isaac Chukara, enamored with them as defensive tackle prospects. These guys, insane upside, athleticism, defensive tackles that are just going to overwhelm the interior. They are 3-down players if they continue on the track that they're on. Severely underrated as 3-star prospects at this point in time. Chukara just won defensive MVP at the All-22 event for the regional in State College, Pennsylvania. And if you watch the tape for Alex Haskell, there is a reason that Penn State was going up against the likes of Michigan for this commitment. But they have no defensive ends because Daniel Jennings is not a part of this class anymore. And you have 2 defensive tackles at this point. So Deion Barnes has to get it rolling. They are looking at tons of players at defensive end. Carter Meadows, 5-star defensive end. Everybody wants Carter Meadows. Out of Washington, D.C., He's a consensus 4-star, but he very well could end up as a consensus 5-star, as a top, conservatively speaking, a top 50 player. And I can't say that Penn State's in the driver's seat. I think this is a true three-way battle here between Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, and any school could come out on top. I've heard positive intel for Penn State. I've also seen positive intel for Ohio State and Michigan. So I really don't have a read on this recruitment. I would like to think that Penn State could end up on top because they are closest in proximity to DC, but we'll see. Luke Wafle is the one where, if I'm Penn State, I'm disappointed if I don't land this commitment. And recent intel, again, these are rumors on social media, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but that USC has emerged as a favorite and is in the driver's seat after a recent official visit. Okay, that's all well and good, but Wafle is from New Jersey. California's on the other side of the country, and Owen Wafle, the older brother of Luke, is currently a defensive tackle at Penn State. This guy's the number one prospect in New Jersey, consensus. On3 has him as a top 15 player overall. This is probably easily Penn State's top prospect that isn't named Joey O'Brien on their theoretical big board here of who they want to commit in this class of 2026. Luke Wafle is an extreme priority here. So if Penn State can land Carter Meadows and Luke Wafle, then this entire conversation changes, and Deion Barnes might have an argument to say that he's had the best recruiting class in 2026, that he's had the best recruiting haul in this cycle. Penn State, they recently had somebody, you might recognize this name, Keyshawn Stansel, was on as defensive tackle prospect, recently visited Penn State for an official visit. It was 24/7 that recently put in a prediction for him to go to Clemson. So Tom Allen so far has the lead in that recruitment. Maybe things change, but if 24/7 feels confident enough to put in a prediction for him, I'm going to have to buy into that right now. So Penn State loses a priority there at defensive tackle. Going back to defensive end, Jackson Ford, Ohio State is beginning to make him more of a priority. So don't look at Jackson Ford. Oh, well, he's a below average 4-star. Penn State can afford to pass on him if they get Carter Meadows and Luke Wafle. Why are the Buckeyes going after him so strongly? There you go. Those are the three priorities there. Deion Barnes, if he can land two of them between Jackson Ford, Luke Wafle, and we're talking about defensive end specifically, Carter Meadows as well. Those three prospects, if you can get two of them, you can get three. Deion Barnes takes the cake when it comes to the class of 2026 and recruiting when you compare all the position coaches. Okay, maybe you have secondary, Terry Smith, Anthony Poindexter, because I got to say, 6 defensive backs, man. And Joey O'Brien's still out there. Kari Adams is still out there. Dynamic duo of Penn State can land them. So that's really where the priorities are at this point in time. Deion Barnes is not on the hot seat in terms of, oh, well, this is going to jeopardize his job. No, he has Chukura and Haskell, which are priority commitments here for Penn State. They like these prospects a ton. But I would certainly say when you look at QB, offensive line, secondary linebacker, Deion Barnes has the most heavy lifting to do as this cycle continues on. So and these players are on commitment watch at this point in time. We will see how it unfolds. Luke Wafle, I would say Penn State's in the driver's seat there based on what I've heard, but if USC is making a push, then that is concerning. Florida's there too, Texas, Ohio State. That is who Penn State's going up against. It would be disappointing if they lost that one. They got to find a way to get Carter Meadows. Jackson Ford's in the state of Pennsylvania. Land those defensive ends, and Deion Barnes goes from last to first instantaneously when you compare all of the other position groups. That is where things stand, and that is where we will wrap it up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate each and every one of you for joining another episode here. Thank you to the everydayers. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for daily conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams, whether it's football recruiting, wrestling, basketball, it is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.